Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Second Hands by the Gourishankar. Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog. So usually when I start off these videos, I say by the band and then say their name if it's a band, and if it's not a band, of course I just say their name. So just to make things clear, the Gourishankar are a band, and here are some of my favorite bits from this album. So the Gourishankar, which is actually named after the second highest mountain peak in the rock-walling Himal mountain range, or is also a synonym for the name of the Hindu god Shiva, they are a Russian prog band, which surprisingly makes them the first post-USSR Russian band that we're reviewing on the series this year. Now this band is an odd case because on the one hand they're very obscure, but at the same time they're not that much so. In their rise in the mid to late 2000s, these guys actually got some traction around them when more and more people started discovering them, mostly via the internet. But the thing is, they come from a land which is not known for their progressive rock music, and they have been kept quite obscure for a long while as well. But firstly, who are the Gourishankar? Well, these guys, they're a band that formed back in 2001 in the city of Syktyvkar in Russia. And its founding members were two students who met up in college called Alexander Agranovich, which is also known as Agranson, and the keyboardist Duran Usher. And in 2002, this duo released their first demo tape, which was developed later on in 2003 to a full-on debut album called Close Grip, which was now featuring not 2 but 4 band members. But unfortunately, Close Grip wouldn't really get a lot of attention, seeing as it was only released in Russia, and thus a lot of the people from around the world didn't really know about this very good band at the time. But the thing is, it took them 4 more years until they released their second studio album, which was actually released internationally, and this one got the wheels rolling and definitely got the name Gourishankar out there. And seeing as this album was starting to show very much promising, the band decided to re-release their debut album in 2008 to a wider populace around the world. Now unfortunately, the band did go on a little hiatus for a while, and then they came back in 2016 and released their third studio album called The World Unreal, which unfortunately also only got a Russian release, so it is still kept quite obscure up until today. And as it stands right now, this band is sort of a Schrodinger's band, if you might call them. They've never really said anything about the fact that they're breaking up, but at the same time they didn't really provide us with any solid information of what they're doing, and maybe there's some information out there in like Russian websites or stuff like that, but I couldn't find any of that. And honestly, nobody really knows if they're gonna make something or if they've just left this entire thing behind. And seeing that they can go on pretty long hiatuses as they've done in the past, we can really not know which state the Gourishankar is in right now. But yeah, that's the Gourishankar for you, at least on the tip of the fork. But for now, let's get right right into their most critically acclaimed album, their second studio album called Second Hands. And seeing as not a lot of mainstream, if any mainstream critics actually got around to reviewing this one, this album got its legendary status from peer reviews only. A lot of people who stumbled upon this one or were recommended it by other friends and people and found out that this was a really good album. And well, what does this album sound like? Well, it is quickly apparent that these guys are not playing around. They might be a bunch of college students that formed a band together, but honestly there's a lot of talent to be found on here. So we have Vlad Weiner, who actually sings on this album, and he doesn't have an accented English voice. Now I don't know what it is, but the names of a lot of these band members aren't really that Russian, at least not what you might expect. So I don't know if this is a Russian band because they reside in Russia, but they're actually from different regions of the world. Again, not a lot of information to go on. Of course, we have Usher on the keyboards. He is absolutely omnipresent on this entire album. Probably most of the credit for what you can hear on this one goes to him, but you of course also have Agranson both on the guitars and the basses doing a fantastic job, as well as having Cat Hetty on the drum set also doing a stellar performance. Now, trying to describe what this music sounds like was definitely a conundrum I had to break my head through and try to realize how to describe it to you guys. And well, I think I've come up with something pretty good. The music of the Gourishankar on Second Hands sounds a bit like world music, but not if it came from different regions of the world, but rather if it came from different worlds altogether. There are so many things on this album which I couldn't in my wildest dreams even try to imagine, at least on a compositional level. Stuff that really wouldn't work together, but still they are together. Stuff that sounds like what aliens would maybe make music. I don't know, but they've somehow taken all of these influences, if you can call them, and put them all together into one very chaotic album, yet very structured and very fine to listen to, and well, it sounds both unexpected and pleasing at the same time. The thing about this album and this band, it really doesn't stop breaking norms, and one of the things which I really liked about the songs on here is that it feels like the band are reinventing themselves multiple times mid-songs. Unfortunately, there is one drawback to this album, and that's the fact that Weiner's vocals kind of seem to overtake a lot of the ideas and creativity and vibrancy of this album. Whenever he sings, the music is just kind of set aside, which is something very unfortunate because I would have hoped that his vocals would be better integrated with the melody itself. But of course, some of the upsides for this album also happen to be its downsides. You see, this album is 1 hour and 10 minutes long, and it covers many grounds, mostly just magical and spiritual grounds, which I wasn't really expecting, but I might even add maybe it covers too much ground. Yes, this album is one of those classical cases of an album that might just be too much at some point because it has so many things inside of it, it doesn't really stop to take a break, and that's quite unfortunate. I had this in the past with many albums, and this one gave me the same experience to the point where at the halfway point I couldn't really take it anymore. I said okay, I stopped the album, I went ahead, made myself a toast with some butter, came back and re-listened to it from that point onwards and had a better experience overall. But of course, on this series I like listening to albums all the way through in one sitting to get the entire and full experience of them, because while there are certain albums which you have to just stop in the middle and go do something else, there are certain albums which you literally just can't stop in the middle, so I'm trying to experience them as a whole, but with this one it's just too much for me. Yet there is one more flaw which might be less significant honestly, but looking at it is still important for the duration of this album, the way that it's structured. You see, the thing is, I said before that the band knows how to reinvent themselves mid-song, and while that's something entirely stellar which I love, the thing is, they don't really have enough structure to keep their songs well balanced. Think to yourselves about the best long epics that you know, or stuff like that. They have some sort of structure even if they're prog. They have recurring motives, they have some, similar ideas all throughout, they have a progression, but this band can just suddenly reinvent everything at the blink of an eye and never really come back to it, which makes each and every song kind of just its own thing thing, but a part of a bigger conundrum of happenings, if that makes any sense. The thing is, this album lacks some integral structure, which is something that is lost upon it, and combining that with its overwhelming qualities does make it for a bit of a tricky listen. But all in all, this album has turned out to be a wonderful Slavic surprise. I really loved it. I'm so happy that this is my first introduction with Russian prog, because it's honestly very good and very much different from a lot of the other things we've seen from Estonia and, you know, post-USSR states, so that's also nice to see. And anyway, I would love coming back to this band, but unfortunately this is their only representation on the list this year, so this is where we'll have to stop. So this album has two cover arts. Presumably the one is the Russian release cover art and then the second one is like the international release cover art or something like that. But for today's video's purposes, we're gonna review and we're gonna talk about the original Russian cover. Now honestly, there's really not a lot that I can say about this cover except for the fact that it's a product of its time. It looks very odd nowadays, but when you look at covers from this era, you kind of sort of start seeing that a lot of covers went through this sort of very unexplained formula. Just look at covers for like The Tangent or even Jadis at the time. They kind of all have the same vibe to them. And yes, of course, it doesn't really make a lot of sense today looking at this. I have no idea what we're viewing on here. There's like a collage of half exposed stuff, and then we have the white lines and the Gourishankar, and you know, it's something you see on a CD and you don't really think a lot about. I guess that's just fine. But all in all, this album, to me at least, sits at a very comfortable rating of 8 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're gonna be listening to Mathematical Mother by Universal Totem Orchestra. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wan, Wrist of Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are just the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.